There are quite a few new leads in the Nancy Guthrie case that you need to be aware of. And the question everyone is asking is whether any of these could finally push this investigation toward an arrest, toward answers, toward getting this case solved. You are going to have to stick around to the end of this video to find out. You are also going to hear why a founding member of the NYPD K-9 unit is calling out Sheriff Nanos, and honestly, it is quite messy. Let's get straight into it. In an interview on TMZ's YouTube channel, Mike Gold went on record about this investigation, and what he said has been difficult to ignore. But who exactly is this man, and why is he calling out Sheriff Chris Nanos? Gold is a retired NYPD lieutenant and one of the founding members of the NYPD K-9 unit, one of the most respected canine search programs in American law enforcement. He did not arrive at this conversation as a television commentator looking to fill airtime. He built this program from the ground up. When Mike Gold speaks about how canine resources should be deployed in a missing persons case, that is not a viewing opinion. That is operational knowledge built across decades of actual fieldwork. What he said is that the decision by Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos to put cadaver dogs on hold during this investigation is, in his own words, baffling. And his reasoning is specific. Human remains detection dogs are the primary technology available to detect odor from people who are missing. Courts formally recognize these animals as scientific instruments. They work at night, they function in all terrain, and according to Gold, the moment this was confirmed as an abduction, those dogs should have been first on the ground, not held in reserve. His exact words, "So why the sheriff chose not to use them, I don't understand." And further, "I stretch my head to think, I can't think of any other rationale why you would say we're putting cadaver dogs on hold. It defies logic."
Cadaver dogs, human remain detection dogs, are highly trained specifically for this. They're a technology, a very sophisticated technology, actually considered by the courts as a scientific instrument, because they have the ability to detect invisible odors that are not detectable by humans. So they're highly trained. They should have been utilized in this case. The sheriff's decision not to use them is baffling to me. They have night vision, scotopic vision. They could go out in all kinds of environments. And for him to put them, I think I'm going to paraphrase, but I think he said we're going to put them on hold for now, which to me makes no sense.
Here is the detail that has been largely overlooked. The Pima County Sheriff's Department does not own its own cadaver dogs. They borrowed K-9 units from the local Border Patrol office in the early days of the search. Those dogs were eventually stood down. Nanos told Fox News Digital they are available if needed in the future and declined to discuss specific leads or evidence. Gold's position is that if needed in the future is not a standard that applies to a case involving a vulnerable 84-year-old woman who has been missing with no proof of life for well past 69 days and counting. Gold also went on record with an assessment that goes beyond the dogs. After this long, without proof of life, without any public development, his professional read based on historical patterns in abduction cases like this one is that this is now a homicide investigation and it needs to be treated like one. He believes Nancy did not leave her home alive and that when she is found, she will be within a 5-mile radius of that house. He added one more thing that caught attention. It's going to be resolved, and people are going to be surprised by the outcome of it. Before we go any further, here is a big thank you for trusting us with your time and for supporting this channel's journey. Our target is to hit 1,000 subscribers before May 2026, and we are getting very close to making that happen. If you have not already subscribed, we kindly ask you to do that right now. And if this video is giving you something, please hit the like button as well. As a thank you, we promise to keep delivering accurate, well-researched coverage on stories that matter. No filler, no guessing, just the facts. Now back to it. Let's get into the leads that are actually new, the questions this investigation has not publicly answered, and the angles that deserve more attention than they have received. The first one is something that has not been discussed enough, and once you hear it, you will understand why it matters. The Catalina Foothills is a residential desert neighborhood. People live there with dogs. At 2 in the morning, any dog within earshot of Nancy's property would have reacted to a stranger moving through the yard, disabling lights, propping doors open, and moving through the inside of that house for an estimated 41 minutes. Dogs in residential areas bark at unfamiliar people in the dark. That is not a speculation, that is basic animal behavior. The question that has never been publicly answered is this: did any neighbor hear their dog reacting that night? Did anyone dismiss it as nothing because it was 2 a.m. and they went back to sleep? And critically, have investigators actually asked? The FBI returned to the neighborhood in March to ask residents about Wi-Fi disruptions around the time of the abduction. Whether they asked about dogs that night has never been confirmed. One comment on a previous video about this case, from a viewer whose elderly aunt was attacked during a robbery, said she was beaten because she was screaming. That comment got 100 likes. If Nancy called out, if she made any sound, dogs within range would have responded. That response could place a neighbor awake at the exact time of the abduction. It could be the thread that leads somewhere. Whether anyone has pulled it remains an open question. The second lead is the laptop. There's a laptop in Nancy's kitchen that was connected to a live security feed. If that feed was active at approximately 1:47 a.m., just before the doorbell camera was disabled, it may have captured the suspect's approach from a different angle. It may have shown the vehicle used to take Nancy. It may have recorded audio from inside the house during those 41 minutes. That laptop was sitting in the kitchen while this crime was happening. It's a potential silent witness that has not been publicly addressed by the Sheriff Department or the FBI. Whether it was examined, what it contains, and why it hasn't been mentioned in any official update are questions this investigation owes the public an answer to. On the DNA, the most current development worth noting is this: the sample collected from Nancy's home is mixed, meaning it contains genetic material from more than one person, and the lab analyzing it has reported significant challenges. DNA expert C.C. Moore noted today that new mixture deconvolution software is being developed specifically to handle this type of complex sample, and that this case is part of the reason that development is being accelerated. Whether that technology arrives in time to unlock what is already at the scene is unknown, but it is the most realistic path forward on the forensic side right now. Then there are the tire tracks, which former FBI Special Agent Maureen McConnell raised on April 8th. She focused on Nancy's circular driveway, composed of decomposed granite, as the point where she believes the suspect's vehicle pulled up. She said she would have processed every inch of that surface for impressions in the first hours after the scene was discovered. Difficult material, she acknowledged, but not impossible with the right technique and equipment. Whether that was done has never been publicly confirmed. And then the ransom notes, a thread that has been tracked closely throughout this investigation. On April 6th, the same morning Savannah Guthrie returned to the Today Show after more than 2 months away, 2 new letters arrived from the same sender who has been making contact for nearly 2 months. The first repeated the demand, 1 Bitcoin to deliver the kidnappers, as the sender put it, on a silver platter. The second named a location for the first time. The sender claimed to have personally seen Nancy alive with her abductors in the Mexican state of Sonora, which borders Arizona roughly 70 miles south of Tucson. The sender also claimed to have been outside the United States for more than 5 years and to have had no involvement in the abduction itself. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer called the timing deliberate, placed to land on the exact morning Savannah walked back into that studio, and assessed the sender as someone looking for a quick payday rather than a person with genuine knowledge. Her reasoning, anyone with real access to the kidnappers would be reaching for the $1.2 million reward on the table, not asking for half a Bitcoin with no verification and no proof of life. Harvey Levin confirmed he reached out to the FBI about the letters and does not believe they are going anywhere. The criticism of how this investigation has been handled is not coming from one direction. It is coming from multiple credentialed professionals, from the county government itself, and from a paper trail on Nanos that was sitting in public records for over 40 years before anyone looked closely enough to find it. Former FBI Special Agent Maureen McConnell, who raised the tire track question on April 8th, also made a broader observation about the way communication out of the sheriff's office has functioned throughout this investigation. The ambiguity, the one-off interviews, the absence of a dedicated public information officer managing what gets said and when, in her assessment, that kind of communication actively damages a case. When the public does not know what investigators need, people who might have relevant information do not come forward because they do not know what relevant looks like. A neighbor who heard dogs reacting at 2 a.m., a driver who noticed something unusual near the foothills that week, those people need to be told what matters. That has not happened consistently. Former Pima County Sheriff and former United States Surgeon General Dr. Richard Carmona told NewsNation that Nanos made a fundamental operational error by personally announcing the reopening of Nancy's crime scene to the press. Carmona's point was specific. A sheriff does not do that. That decision belongs with investigators, managed operationally, not announced on camera by the elected official running the department. An independent investigation commissioned by Pima County found that Nanos used his position for political gain during his 2024 re-election campaign, a campaign he won by 481 votes, narrow enough to trigger a mandatory recount. And then there is the public record on Nanos himself, which the Arizona Republic uncovered in March and which the Board of Supervisors is now formally compelling him to address under oath. His public resume stated he worked at the El Paso Police Department until 1984. The actual records show he submitted a resignation in lieu of termination in 1982, 2 years earlier, following a string of disciplinary incidents that included allegations of beating a handcuffed suspect with a flashlight, excessive force, insubordination, and off-duty gambling. He was not indicted, but he resigned to avoid being fired. That is the man who has been the public face of every press conference in this investigation. And when the Arizona Republic put those records in front of the public, his department's response was to call the date discrepancies clerical errors. It does not stop there. In 2024, Nanos was stopped at the TSA checkpoint at Tucson International Airport with a loaded, undeclared firearm in his carry-on bag, 5 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber. He was escorted off the concourse, allowed to secure the weapon in his vehicle, and rebooked on a later flight. No charges were filed. A local resident raised it publicly at a Board of Supervisors hearing because she was concerned it had received no media attention. Supervisor Matt Hines, who put the sworn testimony requirement on the agenda, did not use careful language when describing Nanos to the Irish Star. He said, "He has become a national and international embarrassment, and it has significantly tarnished his department unfairly." He went further. "These people are doing their utmost every day to keep this community safe, and they have to report to a person who is just ethically and morally bankrupted and frankly embarrassingly disqualified to continue service in his post." That is not a critic from outside the process. That is the vice chair of the county board that oversees this sheriff, speaking publicly, on the record, with his name attached. April 21st is the date when the Pima County Board of Supervisors convenes for their next scheduled meeting, and that is when Sheriff Nanos is required to show up, in person or in writing, with sworn answers to 4 specific questions about his employment history, his conduct during the 2024 election, his department's communications with federal immigration authorities, and his consistent budget overruns. His spokesperson has confirmed he intends to comply. What that compliance actually looks like, whether it satisfies the board or gives them more material to work with, is the next live question in this investigation. Supervisor Hines has already established the bar. He used the word substantive, a response that treats the El Paso resignation as a clerical issue and offers nothing meaningful on the political retaliation allegations will not land as substantive. And if the board determines it does not, Arizona Revised Statute 11-253A is explicit. They may declare the office vacant. That is not leverage. That is the actual law. The question is whether 5 supervisors who have already voted unanimously twice on this will use it. What that means for the investigation matters. If Nanos is removed, the county side of a case the FBI is already embedded in loses its lead. Continuity of evidence, access to the investigative record, and whether any of the early decisions can be formally revisited under new leadership are questions that become immediate on April 21st or shortly after. This story is moving, and we are not stepping away from it. We will be here with the full breakdown as it happens. Subscribe so you do not miss it, and leave a like before you go. It genuinely helps this channel keep doing this work at the level it deserves. We will see you on the next one.